Your mama's dead. So what? You better serve my guests, or you can sleep on the street. Those were the first words my husband threw at me while I still had the hospital's sterile smell clinging to my clothes. And when he laughed, a cold, jagged sound that cut straight through my bones, I knew something inside me had shattered. Maybe forever. I served the food with tears streaming down my face, barely able to breathe through the grief pressing against my chest like a stone slab. And then, just when I thought the night couldn't become any uglier, my husband's boss, an older man with a heavy silver cane, grabbed my wrist and stared at me as if he had just seen a ghost. "Why are you crying? And why are you wearing black?" he asked. I told him. His entire face changed, hardened, and then he walked up to my husband and said, loudly enough for the neighbors to hear, "Everyone knew your wife's mother, except you, apparently. She was my sister. And now let me tell you what's about to happen to your career, your house, and your sorry excuse for a life." But to understand the weight of those words, every syllable like a crack of thunder, you need to know what happened 4 hours earlier. 4 hours earlier, I was standing alone in my kitchen, staring at the kettle as it grew cold. The phone call from the hospital had come at noon. The doctor's voice was flat, businesslike, almost bored, but I heard only one word: expired. My mother, my only family, gone. I don't remember sitting down, but the next thing I knew, I was on a stool, hands in my lap, staring at a spot on the wall as the world blurred into silence. I don't know how long I sat there. Time loses meaning when grief slices you open. Then the front door slammed. Kyrie was home. He flew into the kitchen like a storm nobody asked for, loosening his tie and wrinkling his nose at the empty stove. No roast duck, no perfectly laid table, no sparkling glasses or appetizers. Instead, just me, hollow and trembling. "Are you deaf?" he barked. "My CEO is coming tonight. Today decides whether I become VP or stay stuck in middle management. Where's the duck? Where's the prep? What have you even done today?" I lifted my eyes. They were swollen, burning, raw. My voice came out as a cracked whisper. "Kyrie, Mama's gone. She passed away today." He froze, just for a heartbeat. And then the annoyance on his face was the same expression he used when his car got a flat tire. "Died?" he said. "Well, we all go sometime. She was old. It was expected." Expected. The word stabbed me. "Kyrie, that was my mother. I can't host dinner. Call your boss. Tell him we have a death in the family." He stepped toward me, towering, looming, weaponizing his height like he always did. His hands clamped onto my shoulders and he shook me. "You don't understand," he hissed. "If you ruin tonight for me, I'll throw you out onto the street. This is corporate housing. You are nobody here." Outside, the February wind slammed snow against the window. Inside, I realized I had nowhere to go, not even my mother's old apartment. The keys were still at the hospital. "You wouldn't do that," I whispered. "Try me." So I cooked. With shaking hands, with grief dripping onto the cutting board, with the knife slipping more than once. And when the duck finally went into the oven, I changed into the only rebellion I could afford, a simple, high-necked black dress. My quiet morning. At exactly 7 p.m., the doorbell rang. Kyrie plastered a fake smile across his face. Mr. Vance stepped in, a tall, solemn man whose gaze was sharp enough to peel the truth off anyone's skin. I didn't know yet that this man would soon rip apart the world I thought I knew and expose secrets buried decades deep. And I had no idea the night was about to get far worse. Mr. Vance's eyes stayed on me far too long. Not in a strange way, not in a man-to-woman way, but in a way that said he was searching for something, or someone, in my face. And Kyrie noticed, so he grabbed my waist a little too tightly, as if reminding me of my place. His fingers dug into my skin through the black dress. "Darling," he said through clenched teeth, "go get the duck." I nodded and slipped into the kitchen, grateful for the brief escape. Even if it was only for a few breaths, grief had a weight, and tonight it felt like I was carrying it barefoot across broken glass. As I reached for the oven mitts, I heard their voices from the dining room. At first it was polite conversation, rehearsed, stiff, but then the temperature shifted. "Your wife," Mr. Vance said. "Is she grieving someone?" Kyrie laughed. Actually laughed. "As you can see, she's a little dramatic tonight." Dramatic. That word tightened something inside me until it nearly snapped. I carried the roast duck out, its aroma filling the room, and set it in front of them. Mr. Vance's eyes fell on the small black ribbon pinned at my collar. He looked up sharply. To whom are you paying respects? I swallowed. My throat was sandpaper. My mother, sir. She passed away today. Silence. A deep, sinking silence that pulled the air out of the room. Mr. Vance's hand tightened around his cane. His jaw clenched. The muscles in his face twitched, as if he were holding himself back from something violent. Then he asked quietly, almost too quietly, "What was your mother's name?" I opened my mouth, and the grief hit me again, like a wave. Marion! Marion Hale! The cane slipped from his fingers and clattered onto the marble floor. Kyrie jumped. Sir, are you all right? But Mr. Vance wasn't looking at him. He was staring at me. No, through me. As if the world had tilted and he was trying to steady himself. Marion! He whispered. My sister. My breath froze. Your what? He closed his eyes. Pain rippled across his features, raw, old pain. And then everything happened too fast. He stood abruptly, knocking his chair back. Pack a bag, he said to me. You're coming with me. Kyrie laughed again, but this time it was shaky. Well, wait, sir. What? She's my wife. She's staying right here. Mr. Vance turned to him with a coldness I had never seen on any human face. Your wife, he said, is the daughter of the woman you just insulted, the woman you forced to serve dinner on the day she died. And from what I've observed already, you are unfit to handle so much as a goldfish, let alone a Hale. Hale? Kyrie stammered. Mr. Vance ignored him and pointed his cane at my husband, his voice deadly calm. You kept her ignorant. You kept her isolated. You kept her from reaching us. I blinked. My mind scrambled. Reaching you? I don't understand. He softened just a fraction when he turned back to me. You were born into a family that doesn't disappear quietly. There are resources, property, protections, and someone he shot Kyrie a venomous glare, made sure you never knew any of it. My knees buckled, and I reached for the wall. Kyrie lunged toward me. I swear, don't listen to him. Mr. Vance slammed his cane between us. One more step, and I end your career tonight. All the color drained from my husband's face. You wouldn't. I already called HR on my way here. The room tilted. Everything felt unreal. My mother's death was still a fresh wound, and now this man was telling me my entire life had been built on a lie? I whispered. Why didn't she tell me? Why didn't my mother say anything? Mr. Vance's eyes filled with something I never expected to see. Grief. She tried. She reached out for years. But someone kept intercepting her letters. Someone who didn't want you knowing you had a family. My heart stopped. Letters? My mother? Intercepted? I turned slowly toward Kyrie. His eyes darted away. No, it couldn't be. Could it? Kyrie, I said, my voice barely a sound. What did you do? He opened his mouth, but before he could speak, Mr. Vance said, Tell her, or I will. And the truth that came next would destroy everything I thought I knew. Night settled over the village like a whisper, the kind that pressed against the windows and sank into the bones of anyone still awake. The moon was swollen and bruised, hanging low like it had been dragged through something it didn't want to remember. Silence wrapped the rooftops, but it wasn't peaceful. It felt watchful, observing, waiting. Inside the house, the warm glow of lanterns fought weakly against that strange night. The old man, their grandfather, sat in his usual place beside the fire, his back straight, his eyes half closed. To anyone else, he looked like he was drifting into sleep, but I had begun to notice something unsettling. He wasn't sleeping. He was listening, not to us, not to the crackling fire, not to the wind sliding along the walls. He was listening to something else. Zainab, busy sorting through folded clothes, didn't seem to notice the way his brow tightened, or how his fingers froze mid-air whenever a certain kind of sound threaded through the night, a whistle, a shuffle, a faint scrape across the outer wall. She hummed softly to herself, trying to settle into the comfort she had always had here, the comfort she desperately missed. But I stood back, watching him, watching the flicker in his eyes. watching the way the flames bent unnaturally, as if something outside the house breathed too close to the window. And then it happened again. A sound, soft, barely a vibration, but it slid under the door like a cold hand. The old man's eyes snapped open. Zainab didn't hear it, but he and I did. It wasn't an animal. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't anything that belonged to this village. He pressed a hand to the floor, fingers splayed, as though he could feel the ground pulsing with signals the rest of us couldn't detect. His jaw tightened harsh, deliberate, and for a split moment, I saw something in his expression. Fear. Not fear of a thief, not fear of a danger outside, fear of recognition, as if the sound called to a memory he tried to bury. I stepped closer without meaning to. Babaji? I whispered. His hand flew up silent, firm, telling me not to say another word. Then he spoke very quietly, just loud enough for me, but too low for Zainab to catch. Stay near the light tonight. His voice carried weight, heavy, loaded, cracked at the edges, like someone who knew what darkness was capable of. I swallowed hard. Is there something outside? His eyes didn't blink. They always come back when something is about to change. They, not someone. Not something. They. Before I could ask what he meant, before I could press him for the truth that trembled underneath his words, he stood up with shocking steadiness for his age. He walked to the window and pressed his fingers lightly to the glass. Zainab finally turned. Dadaji? What's going on? He forced a gentle smile at her. It didn't reach his eyes. Nothing, Betty. Just the night talking. But when she looked away, his expression hardened again, sharp and alert. He stared into the darkness, like he was waiting for it to blink back. And then, in the faintest reflection of the window, I noticed something. There was movement behind him. Not inside the house, outside, in the yard. A figure, standing still, watching the light. When I blinked, it was gone. The old man sighed, like someone who knew exactly what he had just seen, and in a low voice only I could hear, he said, "They've recognized her arrival." My blood turned cold. Who? I whispered. He didn't turn. He didn't blink. He didn't move. He only muttered one sentence, the kind that hangs in the air long after it's spoken. The ones who should never have found us again. And as he said it, something scratched the door. The scratch wasn't loud. That was the worst part. It wasn't the kind of sound that made you jump or gasp. It was the kind that made every hair on the back of your neck rise slowly, deliberately, one by one, soft enough to question, but sharp enough that your heart immediately knew. This wasn't normal. Zainab froze mid-step, a piece of folded cloth slipping from her fingers. The sound came again, a dragging scrape, thin and measured, like a fingernail being pulled across wood with purpose. Maybe it's a cat? She whispered, though her voice quivered in a way that betrayed her own disbelief. The old man's expression didn't change. He didn't flinch. He didn't look away from the window. He had expected this. He knew this. And that terrified me more than the sound itself. No animals come here at night, he said quietly. They know better. The lantern flame flickered, bending toward the door, as if something outside was pulling at the light. The air grew colder, thickening, pressing into the room like a slow-moving fog. Zainab took a shaky step backward. What's outside? She asked. The old man didn't answer. Instead, he reached for the long metal staff he kept leaning against the wall. A staff I always thought was simply for balance, a relic of his age. But the way he held it now, firm, ready, practiced. It was no walking stick. It was a weapon he had used before. He approached the door with unsettling calm, pressing his palm flat against it. He closed his eyes like he was reading something through the surface. The vibration, the presence, the intention. His breath caught. They're testing the boundary. My stomach twisted. Who? Dadaji, just tell us. He opened his eyes, and something old and haunted lived in them. A shadow of memories he wished he could burn out of existence. Not tonight, he said. Tonight you stay behind me, no matter what. Zainab shook her head. Dadaji, please, you're scaring us. Before he could respond, the scratch turned into a knock. One slow, deliberate knock. Not human, not animal, not sane. Something was mimicking a knock, learning, the rhythm of people. Zainab gasped, covering her mouth. I felt the pressure in the air shift again, like the night outside leaned closer to listen to our fear. The lanterns flickered harder, The old man tightened his grip around the metal staff, jaw clenched. He whispered, "They want to see if she responds." "Responds to what?" Zainab cried. He glanced at her, truly looked at her, and his face softened with an ache I didn't understand. "You!" he said. The house fell silent. Zainab's lips parted, confusion draining into dread. "Me? Why would anything look for me?" His next words came out as a breath of grief. "Because your return has awakened them." My chest tightened. Return? Awakened? Who were they? And why did the old man sound like this was all inevitable? Another knock, harder this time, rattled the wood. The old man raised the staff. The lantern flame bent sharply, as if being sucked toward the door. Then, a voice. A voice from outside the house. Soft, icy, too smooth, too practiced, too close. It spoke her name. Zainab. She froze as if turned to glass. I felt my heart stop. The old man whispered sharply, "Don't answer it. Whatever you do, don't answer." But Zainab was trembling, her breath caught between confusion and terror. That doesn't sound like it isn't," he snapped. The voice whispered again, this time clearer, shaped with eerie precision. "Za-nab." Open the door. Every muscle in my body locked, because the voice didn't just whisper her name. It copied it, perfectly, like something had listened to her speak earlier, and was trying to sound like her. Zainab stumbled backward, terror flooding her face. The old man positioned himself between her and the door, lowering his stance in a way that did not belong to a man his age. "Stay behind me," he repeated. "Why?" I whispered. His answer was quiet, devastating, final. "Because if she answers it, they'll know she's awake." The voice outside scratched the wood again, this time laughing. The laugh outside the door wasn't loud. It was thin, breathy, almost playful, the kind of laugh children make when they're imitating something they don't understand, repeating a sound they've heard, not knowing what emotion it's supposed to represent. Except this wasn't a child, and whatever was outside the door knew exactly what it was doing. The old man's grip tightened around the metal staff. Muscles in his forearms trembled, not with weakness, but with restraint. He held his breath like a soldier waiting for the exact second to strike. Or run. "Back away," he ordered, voice low, controlled. But Zainab didn't move. She stood frozen, her face pale, her breath sharp and uneven. Her eyes weren't on the door. They were somewhere far away, like the voice had pulled at a memory she didn't know she had. "Zainab," I whispered, stepping toward her. "Hey, look at me." But she didn't. Her gaze stayed locked on the door, her pupils dilated, her expression hollow, like she recognized that voice even though she knew she shouldn't. "Zainab!" I grabbed her shoulders. She blinked, finally snapping out of whatever held her. "What? What is happening to me?" she whispered. "Why did it sound like I knew who was calling me?" The old man turned sharply. "You don't know them. They know you." Another laugh, softer this time, almost whispering amusement into the cracks of the wood. The old man's jaw hardened. "It's trying to confuse you," he said, "trying to imitate a connection that does not exist." Zainab shook her head. "But it felt like nothing," he snapped, louder than I had ever heard him. His voice cracked with something that sounded like fear wrapped in grief. Zainab flinched. He immediately closed his eyes, exhaled, and softened his voice. "Betty, I'm sorry, but you must not trust anything you hear tonight. Not one sound, not one voice, not even if it uses my tone. Do you understand?" She nodded, tears gathering at her lashes. But before either of us could speak, the voice outside shifted. It no longer whispered her name. This time, it whispered, "Let us in." Not a request, not a command, a chant. The house shivered with every repetition. The windows trembled subtly, like something outside was pacing, circling, brushing against the walls. "Let us in. Let us in. Let us in." The old man stepped back from the door, raising the staff high enough to strike if the wood splintered. And then, suddenly, the chanting stopped. Complete silence. Thick, too thick. Zainab clutched my arm, nails digging into my skin. "What does it want?" she whispered. The old man didn't answer immediately. His eyes drifted to the ceiling, not in fear, but in calculation. He listened to the house breathe, the night breathe, the silence breathe. Then he stepped toward us and placed one hand on Zanab's head, like a blessing or a shield. "You were never supposed to come back here," he whispered. "Not after what happened the night you were born." My heart slammed into my ribs. "Her birth?" I asked. "What are you talking about?" But he kept his eyes on Zanab. Sad, heavy, full of a pain I didn't understand. "They marked her the moment she arrived in this world." Zanab's voice cracked. "Who marked me?" He swallowed hard. "The ones outside." My skin turned to ice. But it didn't end there. Because the moment he said those words, something slammed against the roof. A heavy, crawling weight. Not footsteps, not an animal. Something dragging itself slowly toward the edge, toward the wall, toward the door. The lanterns dimmed, choking for air. The old man whispered, "They know she's remembering." Zanab collapsed to her knees, gripping her head in agony as a sudden, violent pain ripped through her. "Make it stop!" she cried. "Please, make it stop! What is happening to me?" The old man dropped beside her, holding her tight. "You must fight it," he said. "Don't let them inside your mind. Not again. Not again." Those words hit me like a blow. Again? Before I could question him, before Zanab could breathe, before the old man could finish the prayer he was muttering under his breath. A voice whispered through the ceiling. This time inside the house, right above us, in a tone perfectly mimicking Zanab's own voice. "Let me in." The voice came from directly above us. Zanab's voice. Her exact tone. Her exact rhythm. But wrong. So wrong it twisted the air around us. "Let me in," it whispered again, crawling through the wooden beams overhead like a cold river of sound. Zanab trembled violently, her nails curling into her palms. "That's not me," she cried. "That's not me. Why does it sound like me?" The old man pulled her close, holding her head against his chest, as if shielding her from something she couldn't see. "It's echoing your memory," he murmured, "using your own voice against you." I stared at the ceiling, breath stuck in my throat. "Why her voice?" I whispered. "How does it know?" "It always knows," he said quietly. Another chill rippled through the air. The voice above us giggled, a short, broken imitation of laughter, and then whispered a single word with haunting clarity. "Again." The old man closed his eyes in pain. Zanab clutched him tighter. "Again? What does that mean? Why is it saying that?" But he didn't answer. He just held her, as if letting go would somehow give the voice permission to reach her. The weight on the roof shifted, slow, dragging, like something was crawling across the beams, mapping the house by sound. Bentwood creaked. Dust trickled down in soft gray lines. Then, tap! Right above Zanab's head. She gasped, flinching violently. Tap! Tap! Not knocking, not scratching. More like counting. The old man lifted his staff, pointing upward. "They're not trying to enter the house," he said. "Not yet." I swallowed hard. "Then what are they doing?" He looked at me with a hollow sadness that made my stomach drop. "They're trying to locate her." Zanab shook her head desperately. "Why me? What did I ever do? Why would anything look for me?" He finally met her eyes, and his voice softened. "You didn't do anything. You were chosen." "Chosen for what?" she cried. Silence. The voice above whispered again, this time not imitating Zanab. A different tone, older, more familiar. It spoke in the exact voice of her mother. My blood froze. Zanab's breath shattered into a sob. "No," she whispered. "No, no, that's impossible. She's gone. She's been gone for years." But the voice didn't stop. It spoke gently, warmly, so convincingly real it made the room tilt. "Zanab, open the door, Betty." Her legs buckled. She fell to her knees, hands shaking uncontrollably. The old man lunged forward and grabbed her face between his palms. "Look at me," he demanded. "That is not her. Do you hear me? That is not your mother." Zanab sobbed. But how? Why does it sound so real? Because they remember everything, he whispered. They heard her voice the night you were born. They remember the screams, the prayers, the fear. A tear slid down his cheek, the first I had ever seen. And they remember the moment your mother handed you to me and begged me to hide you. The room spun. Hide her, I whispered. From what? The old man's voice cracked open like a wound. From them. A loud thud shook the roof, interrupting him, this one heavy, deliberate, as if something had jumped down from a higher point. Dust fell in a cloud. The lanterns flickered wildly. Zainab pressed her hands to her ears. Stop! 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 It's inside my head! Make it stop! The old man held her tight. You must block it out. Don't listen. That voice is a lie, every word of it. But the voice above us changed again. This time deeper, angrier, not her mother, not Zainab. A voice that sounded like it came from something without lungs, without shape, without mercy. A voice that said her name like a threat. We found you. The old man stiffened. He whispered one sentence, a sentence he had avoided for years. They know she survived. Before I could even react, something outside slammed against the front door. With such force, the frame bent inward. Wood splintered. Lanterns rattled. The house shook. And then, chillingly, impossibly, a second voice whispered from the back door. Then a third voice from the window. Then a fourth voice from the walls. All whispering the same words in different, distorted tones. Let her out! Zainab screamed. And the old man's staff glowed faintly, a shimmer of metal heating under invisible pressure as he stepped forward, and shouted, Stay away from her! The voices stopped. Silence. Heavy, crushing silence. Then a single knock. But this time, not from outside. From inside the walls, right beside Zainab's ear. The knock from inside the wall did something none of the earlier sounds had done. It broke Zainab. She collapsed backward, scrambling across the floor, her breath slicing through her chest like she was drowning on air. I grabbed her, pulling her close. But she was trembling so violently, it felt like her bones were shaking inside her skin. Make it stop! She cried. Please, make it stop! Why is it so close to me? The old man didn't move at first. He stared at the wall, like he was staring into a grave he'd thought would never open again. Another knock. This time softer. As if whatever was inside the walls wanted to reassure her that it knew exactly where she was. Dadaji, I whispered. It's inside. What do we do? He didn't answer. Not because he didn't know, but because he was remembering. Remembering something he had buried for years. Zainab's sobs grew harsher, her hands gripping her head. It's whispering inside me, she cried. I can hear it under my skin. Why can I hear it under my skin? The old man's eyes finally closed. And in that moment, he looked older than ever. Not because of age, but because of guilt. It's not speaking from the walls, he said quietly. My heart dropped. It's speaking through them. Zainab choked on a breath. Why? She whispered. Why would anything want to reach me like this? The old man sat down slowly, lowering himself to her level, his staff trembling in his hand. Because they marked you the moment you entered this world, he whispered. And now they recognize the mark waking inside you. Zainab stared at him through tears. I don't understand. What did you hide from me? What happened when I was born? He sighed. Not like someone tired, but like someone who had run out of places to hide the truth. You were never supposed to return to this village, he said. And I was never supposed to speak of that night again. Zainab grabbed his arm desperately. Tell me. Silence. Then, he began. The night everything changed. The night you were born, the old man said softly. The storm was the worst I had ever seen. The wind tore at the houses, the trees bent like they were begging the sky for mercy, and the river rose so high, the earth shook beneath it. Zainab blinked through tears. My mother. Was she scared? He nodded slowly. She was terrified, not because of the storm, but because she knew they were coming. A chill shot down my spine. Coming for what? I asked. For her child, he whispered. For you, Zainab. Zainab's breath hitched. He continued, voice trembling. I was not here that night. Not in this house. I was down the valley with a healer because your mother had sensed something was wrong long before her labor began. She felt watched, followed, touched by something that existed beyond what our eyes can see. A faint knock sounded again inside the wall, almost impatient, but he ignored it, forcing himself to speak. When her contractions began, she screamed not in pain, but in warning. She said, They know she's coming. The lantern flickered violently. Zainab hugged herself tightly, shaking. What happened next? She whispered. The old man swallowed. When your first cry filled the room, everything went silent. The wind, the river, the storm. The world held its breath. The atmosphere in the room thickened, as if the house itself remembered that night. Then, he continued, voice cracking. 3 knocks sounded on the door. Zainab froze. Like tonight, she whispered. He nodded. Yes, exactly like tonight. But back then, they did not hide. They stood outside the door, their shadows long and distorted under the lightning. My pulse hammered. What were they? I asked. He shook his head. No shape I can describe belongs to this world. Zainab covered her mouth, tears spilling down her face. What did they want from me? His eyes softened with a grief too deep to measure. They wanted what they always want, the newborn whose cry echoed beyond the veil. The veil? I asked. He didn't answer me. He looked only at Zainab. When your mother realized they had found you, she placed you in my arms. She kissed your forehead, and with her last breath she said, Hide her. Hide her until the mark fades. Zainab sobbed into her hands. But the mark didn't fade, the old man whispered, voice trembling. It has been dormant all these years, until you returned. Another knock inside the wall, inches from her shoulder. Zainab screamed. The old man grabbed her hands. Listen to me, he said urgently. The mark is not a curse, not yet. It is a door, and doors can open, or be sealed forever. How do we seal it? I asked. He didn't answer, because at that moment, the wall beside us cracked. A thin, dark line split through the surface, widening slowly, like fingers pushing from the other side. Zainab's voice trembled. Dada ji! They're breaking through, the old man raised his staff. But before he could strike, a hand slid out of the crack. Not a human hand, not an animal hand. A hand made of shadow, pulling itself through the wall like liquid darkness. And it pointed directly at Zainab. My heart started beating faster as I stared at the message again. I need to tell you something about him before it's too late. Before what was too late? Why did she sound like she was running out of time? I quickly typed back, Who are you, and what are you trying to say? But she didn't answer. Seconds turned into minutes. Minutes felt like hours. And the silence. It was louder than the message itself. Just when I thought she wouldn't reply, my phone buzzed again. But this time, it wasn't her. It was him, my husband. Where are you? Why aren't you picking up? His voice note came through calm, but with an edge that wasn't usually there. And for the first time ever, I hesitated before replying to him. Something inside me whispered, Don't tell him about the message. Not yet. I swallowed hard and texted back. Just busy. I'll call you later. But as soon as I sent the message, another notification appeared. The unknown woman again. Please listen. He made a mistake years ago, an irreversible one. And now it's coming back. My throat dried. My fingers trembled. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't a joke. This felt like a warning wrapped in desperation. I typed quickly. What mistake? What are you talking about? Tell me clearly. The typing dots appeared. Then disappeared. Appeared again, then stopped. And finally, she sent just 3 words. 3 words that made my legs go numb. He knows already. My blood turned cold. Who was she talking about? What did he know? And why did I suddenly feel like someone had been watching me? Closer than I ever realized. Before I could process anything, a sound echoed through my house. A soft knock, right at my front door. Slow, heavy, deliberate. I froze completely. Because my husband was supposed to be at work, and no one else ever visited unannounced. I held my breath as the knocking continued, this time louder, sharper, almost impatient, and then a male voice called out. Not angry, not friendly, but strange. Too calm. I know you're inside. We need to talk. My heart slammed against my chest. Because the voice, it wasn't my husband's. I didn't move. Not a muscle. My breath felt like it was stuck in my throat. The man outside knocked again. Slower this time, almost as if he knew I was frozen in fear. Open the door, he said. Still calm. Too calm. Every instinct in my body screamed the same thing. Don't. Move. I stepped back quietly, gripping my phone so tightly it hurt. My mind raced. Should I call my husband, my parents, the police? But then I remembered the woman's message. He knows already. Was this connected? Was this man here because of her warning? Or because of something my husband did? The knocking stopped. Silence spread through the house, thick, heavy, terrifying. I tiptoed toward the peephole, my hands shaking uncontrollably. But before I could look through it, my phone buzzed again. A message from the unknown woman. Just 2 words this time. Don't open. My knees almost buckled. I forced myself to look through the peephole anyway, slowly, carefully. But the hallway was empty. The man was gone. Or so I thought. Because when I took a tiny step back, a shadow moved across the crack under the door. He was standing off to the side, waiting, watching. My stomach twisted. This wasn't random. This man wasn't lost. He was here for me. Suddenly, my phone rang loud enough to make me flinch. It was my husband calling again. I stared at the screen, confused and terrified. Why was he calling at this exact moment? Was it just coincidence? Or something else? My hands trembled as I answered. Hello? His voice was unusually soft. Are you alone at home? My heart stopped. How did he know to ask that? I swallowed hard. Yes. Why? There was a pause. A long one. Too long. And then he said something that made the room feel ice cold. Listen carefully. If someone knocks again, don't open it. No matter what. My blood ran cold. The warning from the woman, the man at the door. And now, my husband telling me the same thing? My voice cracked as I whispered, Why? What's happening? He exhaled shakily, a sound I'd never heard from him before. Because the mistake I made, the one I never told you about, it's not just coming back. I gripped the edge of the couch to keep myself from collapsing. It's already here. His words didn't just scare me. They split something open inside me. The mistake I made. It's already here. I could barely breathe. My eyes drifted toward the door again, where that silent shadow still lingered. The air inside the house felt too heavy, too still, like the walls were listening. I pressed the phone harder to my ear. What mistake? What are you talking about? But my husband didn't answer immediately. I could hear his breathing, not calm, not composed, but shaking, like someone who knew everything was collapsing. Finally, he whispered, I never wanted you to find out like this. A chill crept down my spine. Find out what? I stepped away from the door, slowly, my voice trembling. Just tell me, please. But instead of explaining, he asked another question. And this time, his voice sounded urgent, desperate. Did he say anything to you? The man outside? Did he talk to you? My heart thudded painfully in my chest. He just said my name. A sharp inhale from his side of the call. Then a whisper. Zanab. Lock every window. Right now. Something in his tone made my fingers numb. I moved mechanically, locking the nearest latch, then the next one. As I moved, I asked again, Why won't you just tell me what's happening? He exhaled shakily. I will, but not over the phone, not while he's there. A pause. Then, a few years before I met you, I did something that put people in danger, and someone has been looking for me ever since. My throat tightened. This wasn't a small mistake. This was something bigger, darker, something that had followed him into our life. Who? I whispered. Who's looking for you? Silence. Then, someone I shouldn't have crossed. I felt like the ground beneath me was shifting. My husband wasn't the man I thought he was. He wasn't the man I had defended, trusted, built a life with. I grabbed the last window lock with shaking hands. But before I could close it, before the latch clicked, a voice drifted in from outside the glass. Too close. Too calm. You don't have to hide from me. I froze. The same voice from the door. He was now standing outside the window. My breath left my lungs in a sharp gasp. I stepped backward, but my foot caught on the rug, and I almost fell. My husband's voice erupted through the phone. Zainab! What happened? I couldn't even answer, because the man outside leaned in closer, his face partially hidden in shadow. And then he said something that made my blood turn to ice. I'm not here for him. My hand trembled violently. Not here for him? Then, he smiled slightly. I'm here for you. The phone slipped from my hand and hit the floor. For a second, I thought my heart actually stopped. I'm here for you. His words hung in the air like smoke. Thick, poisonous, suffocating. I stumbled backward until my back crashed into the dining table, making the plates rattle. My phone lay on the floor, my husband's voice faint but frantic. But I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't even blink, because the stranger outside the window didn't break eye contact. Not once. His gaze wasn't wild or violent. It was worse. It was calm, controlled, like someone who had already planned every step. The kind of look someone gives when they're certain you cannot escape them. My voice came out barely audible. What do you want from me? He tilted his head slightly, as if studying me, not with malice, but with something disturbingly close to familiarity. You don't remember me, do you? My stomach twisted. Remember him? How could I possibly remember a face I had never seen in my entire life? Or had I? A flicker of something, a sensation, not a memory, stirred in the back of my mind. A faint, cold whisper of a feeling I couldn't name. Before I could ask who he was, he lifted a hand and pressed it against the glass. Not to break it, not to force his way in, but almost gently. I don't want to hurt you, Zainab. Hearing him say my name, like he'd known it for years, made a shiver run through me. My knees weakened. I don't know you, I whispered. I've never met you. His expression softened. That's the problem. You don't remember what he made you forget. My breath hitched. Forget? What I made you forget? My chest tightened painfully, confusion, fear, and something else. Something I couldn't describe. I dropped to my knees and grabbed my phone, pressing it to my ear. Are you still there? I gasped to my husband. His voice burst through, panicked. Zainab, leave the house right now! I can't, I cried. He's outside the window. Zainab, listen to me, he said, his voice trembling. You need to stay away from him. Don't listen to anything he says. He's dangerous. The man outside didn't react to my husband's voice, didn't flinch, didn't even blink. He just watched me with that unsettling, almost wounded look. And then he mouthed something silently. 3 slow words. Words that punched the air out of my lungs. He lied to you. My grip on the phone tightened. Who was lying? Who was telling the truth? Why was this happening? I looked back at the stranger. He stepped closer to the window, shadows sliding across his face. And then he whispered, loud enough for me to hear, ask him about the night of the accident. My entire world froze. Accident? Before I could respond, before I could even process his words, the stranger stepped away from the window and disappeared into the darkness, not running, not sneaking, just slowly fading into the night, leaving me trembling, confused, and broken between 2 truths, one from my husband, one from a stranger who seemed to know my life better than I did. I lifted the phone back to my ear. My voice cracked. What accident is he talking about? Silence. A heavy, terrifying silence. Then my husband whispered, barely audible, Zainab, please. Don't make me explain this over the phone. Something inside me snapped. No, I said, my voice shaking harder than ever. You're going to tell me right now. He exhaled a defeated, haunted sound. And then he said the sentence that shattered my reality. Because the accident he's talking about, the one you don't remember, it wasn't an accident. It wasn't an accident. Those 4 words didn't just confuse me. They destroyed something inside me. I sank to the floor, my back against the cold wall, my hands trembling so violently that the phone kept slipping from my fingers. I could hear my husband breathing on the other end, but he said nothing. Nothing, like he was waiting for me to accept a truth I couldn't even understand yet. Finally, I forced the words out. What do you mean? Not an accident. What did you do to me? He didn't deny it. He didn't scream. He didn't try to calm me. He just whispered, defeated, exhausted, scared. I was trying to protect you. My breath hitched. Protect me from what? He swallowed hard. From the stranger outside? From a past I didn't remember? From my own memories? I pressed my palm to my forehead, trying to make sense of anything, but my mind was spinning too fast, tripping over shadows and half-formed images. Then, a flicker. A flash of something buried so deep it barely existed. Headlights, screeching tires, glass breaking, a voice screaming my name. I sucked in a sharp breath and shut my eyes tight. What did you do? I whispered again. This time he answered. Slowly, each word landing like a shard of glass. You were there, that night. You saw something you were never supposed to see, something that put you in danger. And when it happened, when everything went wrong, he paused, breathing unevenly. You lost consciousness. You woke up days later, and when you did, you didn't remember anything. I felt my heart hammering inside my chest. No, I choked out. No, that can't be true. I would remember something that big. Zanab, he said softly. You begged me not to tell you. You said you didn't want to know. The doctors agreed it was best to let the memory fade. My head spun. Me? Beg my husband to hide a truth this big? To erase something that shattered my life? It didn't make sense. None of it made sense. But why is that man looking for me? I whispered shakily. What does any of this have to do with him? There was movement on his end of the call, like he was pacing. Then he said something that made my entire body go still. Because he was there too. The night everything happened. The air left my lungs. He was the one who saved you. A pause. And he was the one who could expose me. My grip loosened, the phone nearly slipping from my hand. Expose you? For what? Silence. He didn't answer. Not this time. Because at that exact moment, someone knocked on the door. But it wasn't a violent knock, not a threatening one. It was quiet, gentle, patient. A knock that said, I'm not done telling you my side. I turned my head slowly toward the door, my heart beating everywhere in my throat, my ears, my fingers. Zainab, my husband whispered urgently, whatever you do, do not open that door. My eyes, blurred with tears. Because deep down, a part of me felt something I couldn't deny anymore. A strange familiarity, a buried ache, a forgotten connection, and a terrifying possibility. What if the man outside wasn't here to hurt me, but to remind me of something I once begged the world to erase? The knock came again, soft, steady, unavoidable, and then his voice calm, broken, sincere, seeped through the wood. Zainab, I need to tell you what he did. My breath faltered. My world tilted. Because finally, I understood one thing. Only one of them was lying. And I was about to find out who. The knock echoed through the house again. Soft, steady, unavoidable. I stood facing the door, one hand trembling on the handle, the other still clutching the phone. Behind me, my husband's voice shook with panic. Zainab, don't open it. Please. But the man outside spoke again, his voice low and raw. You deserve to know what he took from you. Every bone in my body felt torn between two worlds. One built on love, the other built on truth. My heart pounded so hard it made the floor feel unsteady beneath my feet. My husband whispered again, desperately. He's manipulating you. Don't listen. Stay with me. Stay safe. But for the first time, his voice didn't feel like safety. It felt like a cage. I stepped toward the door. Zainab! My husband cried through the phone. I closed my eyes, exhaled shakily, and unlocked it. The click of the deadbolt echoed like thunder. I opened the door, just an inch, then another, until his figure appeared in the doorway, the man who had haunted my thoughts, my fears, my memories. He didn't step inside. He didn't threaten me. He just looked at me with a grief so deep it felt familiar, like something I'd once known but had buried in a grave of forgetting. His voice cracked. You remember me, even if your mind doesn't. I shook my head, tears streaming down my face. No, I don't. I've never. But he stepped forward just slightly, enough for the light to hit his face fully. And that's when it happened. A memory didn't come back. A feeling did. A feeling like warmth, like trust, like a promise whispered long ago. Something inside me cracked open, not fully, not clearly, but enough. My lungs tightened. Tell me the truth, I whispered. He nodded, eyes glistening. The accident wasn't your fault. It was his. My knees nearly buckled. No, 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 no. My husband's voice erupted through the phone. He's lying, the man outside continued, unfazed. You didn't beg anyone to hide the truth from you. You woke up asking for answers. You were terrified, confused, and you kept asking about me. I stared at him, my breath uneven. He swallowed hard. But your husband, told the doctors he was your only family. He convinced them you weren't stable enough to handle the truth. My stomach twisted violently. No. He erased me from your life, the man whispered, because he blamed me for what happened, and because he knew. If you remembered everything. He hesitated, voice breaking. You might not choose him. My vision blurred instantly, tears flooding down. My husband screamed through the phone. Zainab, close the door! He's dangerous! But the stranger's voice dropped to a whisper that changed everything. I pulled you out of the car that night. I carried you. I saved you. You knew my name, before you forgot it. My chest caved in. And he didn't just erase me, he said softly. He erased the truth of the life you were about to walk into. My fingers loosened around the phone. I wasn't hunting him, the man added. I was looking for you, to make sure you were safe, because he promised he'd never hurt you again. And then I found out he already had. A sound broke inside me, part sob, part realization, part grief. I didn't know belonged to me. My husband's voice turned from shouting to trembling. Zainab, don't listen to him, please. The stranger didn't move closer. He just looked at me with heartbreaking honesty. Ask yourself this, why does he want you to forget? And why am I risking everything, just so you can remember? I stared at him, my whole body trembling, not from fear, but from truth finally clawing its way out of the dark, the truth I had been protected from, or stolen from. I stepped back, looked at the phone, then at the man, and for the first time, I spoke from the deepest part of myself, the part that had woken up that night with no memory, but with a hollow shape in my heart, where someone once belonged. Tell me your name. He exhaled shakily, eyes filling. Ayan. And just like that, not a memory. Did you enjoy this story? And tell me, which city are you listening from? I'd love to meet you in the comments and read your thoughts. If this story touched your heart, you can support the channel with a super thanks. It truly helps me continue creating more stories for you. Thank you so much for your kindness and your beautiful support. I can't wait to hear what you felt, what you learned, and what stayed with you. On the screen, you'll find 2 more powerful life stories that I really recommend, each one full of emotion, twists, and real lessons. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a new chapter. Until the next life story, with love and with deep respect.